Welcome to Hamayan, and it's my great honor to be able to welcome Rav Yoni Rosensweig here tonight. Rav Yoni Rosensweig is many things to many people. He's Rav Yoni for the whole world has a very important job. He's a posek, he's a rav, he's a teacher, he's a builder of an institution. He's a posek in the fact that he's possibly the number one posek in the world on mental health and halacha. Aside from that, he's also a posek on many, many other areas, as you can read all about in his halachic shut, his 3-volume responsa Shut Yishrei Lev. It's also a Rav of Kiyala, Netzach Menashe, and Beit Shemesh, which is very nice. In there, is a teacher in Bedershet Lindenbaum, and is a past Rosh Beit Midrash here in Melbourne. And he's an institution builder, building right now the institute called the Magle Nefesh, which is to help people with mental health challenges navigate the halachic component of their lives. But apart from being a very important person for the whole world, Rav Yoni is also a very important person for me. Rav Yoni is one of my mentors, one of my most important mentors, I would say, somebody who I aspire to emulate. He's also my Rav. When I have serious questions, Rav Yoni is the person I go to on many, many topics. And I also am proud to say that I got smicha from Rav Yoni in Hilchah Nida. And he's also a teacher of mine. Lydia and I were privileged to be able to have a chavruta with Rav Yoni when we were living in Israel. And that was a really wonderful opportunity for us to learn a lot about what you have to say and what you have to offer. So without further ado, thank you, Rav Yoni. We're looking forward to hearing you.
Thank you very much. I apologize in advance for a small cough that I have. But it really is wonderful. I don't know if I ever spoke at Hamayan before, but then again, I never had a student as a rabbi here at Hamayan, so maybe it'll become a regular thing. I also want to say that it's very nice to be back in Melbourne. I think since 2006, this has been the longest that I've been away from Melbourne in one shot, because I've been here for like 3 years. I don't think I've ever been away for 3 years since 2006, but it is definitely very nice to be back and to be able to share some thoughts about what I think is a very, very important topic, which is mental health in our day and age. And I think that if there's one thing that I'm able to do by the end of this talk would be to convince you that it's very, very important if you're not already convinced. But in order to do that, I want to start from the beginning. So I'm gonna give you a brief introduction to this topic, just so that you understand it. Because a lot of times people say, halacha and mental health. That sounds really interesting. What is that exactly? What is halacha and mental health? Questions of halacha and mental health come to me today every day from around the world, and questions like, can I listen to music on Shabbat if I'm suffering from depression or anxiety? Do I need to fast? If I have an eating disorder, Zayin B'Tammuz is coming up, Tisha B'Av is coming up, afterwards there'll be Yom Kippur. Questions of Kibud Avayim in cases of abuse within the family. Is one chayav, is one obligated, not obligated? Questions of certain techniques that come up, within therapy, whether they can be used or cannot be used. So really the list goes on and on. Like I said, I get asked a lot of questions of different sorts. Of course, OCD and halacha, a very big discussion, that has always had. Women who write to me about going to mikvah, and should they have to do this, do they have to do that, etc., etc. And this is heartbreaking to read because clearly they're suffering very much in terms of the preparations that they think they need to do, and they obviously need a way to understand what the healthy way to go about it is. So, like I said, these questions are not few and far between. There are quite a few of them. The second that I publicized that I was involved in this, about 3 years ago, my inbox exploded. I get questions, like I said, like several questions a day. Just the flight over here, right? When I landed, I had like 7 questions on my phone waiting for me, just from the flight. And people just really need help in a whole array of areas. And the problem, right, if a little bit connecting to the topic, the title for this talk, the problem is, right, that we need to make a massive change in terms of the way that Judaism looks at this in order to be able to tackle it. Simply put, Chazal were not aware of the entire gamut of mental health phenomena that we are aware of today. You could say some of it developed as a result of things. You could say that. I don't know. I don't think anyone can prove one way or another. Either way, there are things that we're aware of today that we weren't aware of in the past. Okay? If 150 years ago, a kid would be sitting in yeshiva and all the guys had gone to breakfast, and he's sitting there and he's saying Shema Yisrael again and again and again with kavana, because he wants to get the kavana of that pasuk just right, then it could very well be that the mashgiach would look at the kid and would say, look at him, he's a tzaddik. Look what a tzaddik he is. All his friends have gone to breakfast. He's not going to eat one morsel of food until he gets the kavana just right. Such a tzaddik, such a righteous person. Today, we'll probably say that he's suffering. That the poor guy, it's not that he doesn't want to eat breakfast. He can't. He wants to eat, but he can't eat breakfast. He can't go until he gets this one pasuk and this one kavana just right. He needs help. It's not that it's impossible that some guy would actually willingly sit there and do it. It could be. So people say sometimes like, how do you tell the difference? And the answer is, like I said, are they suffering? Is the person enjoying this and benefiting from it? Or are they feeling like they have to, like they absolutely have to continue and do this? It's that even though it's not comfortable for them. And it's, we spoke about OCD and NIDA before, right? Like I said, I sometimes get, I say this like, I'm not happy about it. I sometimes get very, very detailed emails from women, telling me what they do in order to prepare. And the preparations take days sometimes. Days. No one should be preparing days to go to the mikveh, right? So, obviously, right, and it's clear from the emails, they don't want to do those things. They're suffering. And they're doing those things because they feel compelled. It's an obsessive compulsive disorder. So therefore, the compulsive side of that, is obviously very, very difficult. When a woman tells me, or a man, but I just happen to have more cases with women with this, that she made schnitzel 5 hours ago, and now she's not sure if she washed her hands properly, and now she touched something that she made for the kids with it that has milk. She wants to know whether it's trafed up. Obviously it's not, because the question is so far-fetched. But nevertheless, right, obviously she feels compelled to ask the question. And if she doesn't get an answer, and a lot of times I will answer her, and I'll tell her, of course, it's fine. And then she'll say, I told you it was 5 hours ago. It was actually 4 hours ago. Does that change your answer? Right? That's the amount, that's the compulsion, right? Like, obviously the answer is no different, in that situation. There's no real difference in the question, not significant. This person is suffering. We need to help. So those are questions of halacha and mental health. And what we need to do is develop tools and ways that we can help people. Because if we don't give the answers properly, then we're going to cause damage, or we're going to allow damage to continue under those sorts of circumstances. Right? With OCD, for example, right, the correct rabbinic response to an OCD question is a clear response. Right? Anyone who deals with OCD, and certainly rabbis who have been trained, understand this very, very simply. When you give an answer with OCD, you give a very clear-cut answer. Right? You don't give reasons. You certainly don't say it's a machloket. The word machloket doesn't come into it. All right? And I know rabbis who do that. There's 2 opinions. There's not 2 opinions. Okay? In an answer that has to do with OCD, there's 1 opinion. The opinion that you're about to present, whatever it is, that's the opinion. All right? Because any other thing or any other, complex or convoluted idea will cause damage. Right? there was a guy who used to vow all the time, right? Or used to believe that everything he was saying was a vow. So he would, is that a vow? Is that I said I would do this, I said I would do that, right? So already before me, way before me, there are psukim written by Rav Kanievsky, not the one who just passed away, his father, the Stipler, who wrote that the Nedarim are nothing. There's nothing in the vows. They don't count, etc. Even if you specified them, for someone like that, it doesn't count. You just tell them. Now, once again, because if you start going into little details, well, if you specified it, then it would. And if you didn't, no. You don't start going into details. It doesn't count. Nothing you said counts. So once a guy turned to me about vows, which he always felt like he was constantly making. So he said he once asked the rabbi, and the rabbi told him, it's not a problem because you said you did Hatar Nadarim Erev Rosh Hashanah, and because of Kol Nidre, etc., etc. Once again, that's a bit of a mistake because now he's starting to wonder whether, did I really say the Hatar Nadarim properly, or not? So if it depends on that, so was it really mechaven properly? Maybe, I wasn't mechaven like I should. Okay. So don't give reasonings, right? You don't give reasoning. You don't do that. Because that's just going to make the person start OCDing the reasoning that you gave for the psak. You just give the psak. It's okay. Finished. Right? That's what you do. You just say yes or no. With nida, I tell women to put, if there's no other choice, and a lot of times there's no other choice, I tell them just put a clock on it. That's what I always tell them. I say you prepare for half an hour, but what do I need to get done? Whatever you get done, you get done. Half an hour. It doesn't matter what you get done. Yeah, you go shower, whatever, finished. Whatever there is. But what if I didn't do this? What if I didn't do that? Doesn't matter. Nothing matters. Half an hour, you're ready. I know rabbis who say that even if she doesn't do anything, she should go and go to mikveh. So, if need be, we would say that. But the point is that we need to keep things clear and simple. Now, these rulings that I've mentioned, right? What are they? What am I showing you? What am I saying? I'm saying that we need to think about these things differently than we thought about before. When it comes to mental health, if we are going to meet this challenge properly within the Orthodox community, we need to think about these things differently. We need to create tools and tackle these things in a way that we haven't before. Or else, if we continue on with the same tools that we use for other things, we will eventually either not help or, even worse, sometimes exacerbate the situation. And we need to be aware of that. The questions that we're going to get in this field are not the regular questions. Okay, I don't know if you know what DID is, dissociative identity disorder. It's basically what people call sometimes split personality. Yeah? I don't know one written shaila that was asked about split personality. I don't know. I got asked questions about DID. They're strange questions, I mean, they're complex, Like I had one woman who once reached out to me, and she said that her other personality, which was, like a 4 or 5 year old girl, was going to possibly reach out to me, and she did. I was talking to each personality separately. They didn't even know I was talking to each other. Like I would talk to one, then the other one would contact me, and then the first one would, like a month later, would say, "Oh, I didn't even realize that what's her name spoke to you. Thank you for helping her," et cetera, et cetera. It was like a very strange situation. Yeah, But the first one didn't have a problem with Shmir Shabbos. The second one had a problem because she was like a young girl. She had a problem like keeping Shabbos or whatever it is, and she was very anxious about it, et cetera, et cetera. I even got a question this last Pesach about someone who had, what they call alters. So one of their other personalities was not Jewish. Wanted to know if they could eat chametz on Pesach. So these are strange questions, right? These are not normal questions. But the point is that we need to open our mind a little bit, in terms of our ability to understand the question, and yes, also to respond. That people need a lot of support. Okay, and I think what's most important to understand is that with mental health, what we need to do, what people really do need is support. In other words, I started providing a service that is a halachic service. That's how I came into this. I started answering shailas, but it's not about the shailas. That's what I found out very early on. For people who are listening to the answers, it's not about that. It's about something totally different. It's about having support, and it's about feeling like they can belong to the Jewish community. See, unlike with physical health, where many times the ailment that you have is not connected to a sense of self, meaning it could sometimes, right? If you lose, I don't know, both your hands, it might make you feel like you're less of a person, less productive. It could affect your sense of self. But many times it doesn't affect your sense of self. If you're sick, if you're unwell physically, okay, then you're unwell physically. It doesn't change what I think about myself and what I think about who I am and what I am. But with mental health, many times, yes, questions of self-identity go to the heart of the matter, go to the heart of what is going on with a person, as do questions of spirituality. And that's why they collide, they clash, and they affect each other very, very much so. So I mentioned DID. One day I woke up and I had on my WhatsApp, I had an 8.5-minute message waiting for me from a student, and she was crying through most of it. And what had happened? What had happened was that she basically lost time. In other words, sometimes she blacks out and another personality takes over, and then she doesn't know what happens during that time. Yeah, it's not like she's in bed the whole time. She's running around doing things. Yeah, but she doesn't know what's happening. But even though she didn't know what was happening, her phone recorded parts of the previous evening, and she was beside herself. She obviously had done things that, as far as she was concerned, were terrible. She didn't tell me what it was. Did she eat treif, or did she sleep with someone, or whatever it was? She didn't go into any detail about what it was, but it was clearly something that rocked her religious world in a very negative way. And she just didn't know where to bury herself, so to speak, with what she had done. Now, that's not really a halachic question. Meaning there's nothing to say. What are we going to say? You weren't in control. Obviously it's honest. Obviously, Rahmana Patre, the Torah exempts you. Obviously it's not your fault, right? Obviously all those things. So what did she want from me? To paskin that for her? No. She knows that on her own. What she wanted me to do is to say that to her. She wanted me to tell her that it's all right. She wanted me to tell her that she's a good person, that she's still an Orthodox Jew, that she still is, connected to Hashem, that even though, her body did those things, the fact that she wasn't present, means that it's not on her, and it's not her fault. She wants to be able to understand that. She wants to be able to continue to belong to the Jewish community, to be part of everything that we're doing. That's what she wanted. Halacha, in this instance, maybe all instances it's true, but here very much overtly so, is about meaning and belonging. It's about fighting stigma. That's what it's about. If a person has a high fever and he's lying in bed, and we tell that person, whoa, it's okay. If you have a high fever, you need to take care of yourself. If you're about to give birth, we need to rush you to the hospital. What about the driving? Who cares? Right now we're going to the hospital. Then what do those people feel? They feel like they're not transparent. They feel like we see them. But when a person is lying in bed and he says, I have a depression, I'm suffering from depression, and you might say something, even if you mean it well, but you might say, oh, come on, it's not so bad. Your life is Baruch Hashem, it's very good. Look outside, the sun is shining. Cheer up, everything's going to be okay. So what is that person feeling? Like you don't see them, like they're transparent, like you don't understand their distress. You don't understand how deep things go and how much help and assistance they need, right? That's what they feel because, right? So if I don't paskin for that person, right, I need to listen to music on Shabbat. And I say to that person, no, yeah, come on, 25 hours, you can't go 25 hours without listening to music. That's an answer that does not recognize the depth of the problem and of the issue that we're talking about over here. And so the person doesn't feel like they're part of the community. They don't feel at all like they're part of the community. And that's, once again, stigmatic. It creates the shame that the person feels and the inability to share because of a fear of judgment and a fear that they won't be taken seriously. And that, of course, leads to the fact that people don't understand, right? It enforces the stigma. If people don't share with us, then we don't understand. And if we don't understand, then we can't help, right? But that's the problem. The problem is that we don't really understand. And we need, like I said, paskening, the work that I'm doing in terms of paskening, is about, at the end of the day, raising awareness and battling stigma. Yeah?
Can I go back a step?
Please.
Before you start, before your talk, what happens when I was taught halacha, for example, when I was taught Nida many, many years ago, so chamor if you don't do this, and
Sure.
etc. So I feel that we have to go back and teach in a different way, and that happens in many areas, that people are so scared of the consequences of eating chametz on Pesach or not preparing for mikveh, it's a doraita karet.
Right.
That the way it was taught, even if you didn't have mental illness, you could feel obsessive about it because of the way, or the mikveh lady putting bleach
Right.
on your nails,
Right.
which happened in Melbourne, things like that. So that can create, so I feel that we need to take a step back and teach
Yeah.
halacha in a different way.
So when do we have? There's so much to talk about. So when do we have? Okay, I understand. Oh, I get it. I get what you're saying. Okay, so fine.
I'm not saying that
I'll
halacha can
no.
invite that response.
I'll say. Look about what you're saying. There are two things here.
Is it halacha or is it orthodoxy?
I'll answer that question, and then you'll tell me if there's another question to ask. Okay? In terms of, she asked whether we should be teaching halacha a different way. So there are two kinds of things that you might be referring to. I'll reference both. Okay? It's a bit off topic, but that's fine. Some halachas are just taught wrong. That's true. Yeah, some halachas are just taught wrong out of ignorance or out of the minhag, that people do. Right? I just gave lately a shiur in my community, just on Shabbos I gave. Yeah, about whether a pregnant woman can walk into a cemetery, yes or no. I think there's a myth that not allowed, women are not allowed, or it's a problem to walk in, right? There's no source. I'm telling you now. There is no source for this myth. None. It must be like a little source. No. There is no source. Okay? Are you sure there's no? I'm positive. There's no source. Okay? But people really believe that that's true. Okay? They really believe. In fact, it says the opposite. Im kvar, there's a minhag that is recorded in the halacha about women going in when they're nida. Has anybody heard of that one? No. That one no one has ever heard of. Yeah? People go in, of course, when they're nida, they go into the cemetery. What's the problem? Yeah? 100%. So that's the opposite of basically of being pregnant, is being nida. But nevertheless, okay, go figure. Sometimes people believe the wrong things or know the wrong things. There's nothing I can do about that except for just teach the sources and try to explain where things may have come from or et cetera, et cetera. There's a different thing, okay, which has to do with the way that we teach halacha. Not that the halacha itself is incorrect or is just mischaracterized, but that the way that it's taught. I wish, and this is like a more general wish, that we could teach responsibility without teaching blame. In other words, that I think that people are, and a lot of times I see this with the young people, right? They're taught to be afraid. That they'll go to hell, that they'll be punished, that there's going to be karet. If I do this, it's going to be karet, right? Maybe, but why is that the issue that we're focusing on? It could be karet, it could be this, it could be that, it could be a million things. But so what if it's those things? In other words, that's not the reason why we should be doing things, right? Boys, I know this from boys because that's like my world more, right? Boys who masturbate, who go through that, feel immensely guilty, religiously and spiritually, feel very, very guilty about that. I'm not saying we should celebrate that or anything. I'm not saying we should say, oh, it's great, yeah, you should be doing that. Of course it's a prohibition. Of course it's a problem. But why do we need to associate that with, I am a terrible person, yeah? You're a person who has sinned. Yes, I'm not going to sugarcoat that. I'm not going to say that's not a sin or not a problem. Of course it's a sin and it is a problem. But why do we have to have this deep, deep-seated feeling, right? Like we're a total failure from a spiritual perspective if we do X or Y or Z. Why can't we just teach responsibility without shame? People feel deeply, deeply shamed. I think they should feel sad. I think that's okay to feel sad if you've done the wrong thing, whether ethically or spiritually or otherwise. You should feel sad. You should feel bad, sure, but shame or like total and absolute personal destruction on a spiritual level, like people sometimes do feel when they transgress certain things, like that's not good. That's not healthy. Yeah. Also ethically it's not healthy. If you did something that was unethical, right? You should feel bad about it. But should you feel like you have no redemption, there's no way back, et cetera, et cetera. These things many times also distance people from Judaism. They just, who wants to be, I always say people don't keep Judaism if they're not happy. Sometimes people ask me, why are you religious? So I always say I'm religious because I find it meaningful to be religious. People are always surprised at that. What do you mean? If you didn't find it meaningful, you wouldn't be religious? That's everybody. What do you mean? No one is religious if they don't find it meaningful. No one suffers only in religion. People suffer a little bit. Like they're willing to suffer some to get the meaning that they find in everything else. I always say it's a little bit like marriage. I love my wife, yeah, but and if she's watching this, but nevertheless, but it's a little bit similar. I don't like taking out the garbage and doing the dishes. I don't find any meaning in that specifically, but I find a great amount of meaning in everything else that goes on in the house, and having a wife, and sharing a marriage, and having children, etc., and building a life, and the way all the things that we do. Those things are valuable to me. 95% of the things that go on in my marriage, I find meaningful and productive and wonderful. So I'm willing to put up with the other 5%. Yeah, 100%. That's how it is also with Judaism. If someone's suffering, they leave. That's what happens. Yeah, if someone's just suffering, they don't stick around. I don't know anyone who said, yeah, I just suffer. I don't like anything in Judaism, but the Masorah is really important to me. Or I want to keep my parents happy. You keep your parents happy for X amount of time. Then you get to the age of 22 and then you leave. Yeah, if you're unhappy. If you're unhappy, you leave. There's no such thing as staying just because, because Hashem said. People stay because it's meaningful to them. That's why they stay. And the same thing goes for all this stuff about how we teach halacha, which you said. That brings me back to what you were saying. So I'm saying, if we could teach halacha, if we could teach responsibility and meaning without shame and total spiritual destruction, that would be wonderful, because I think that it pushes people out, pushes people away. It's the same thing with Nida. Yeah, like I said, I think every time I come here to Melbourne, even though I haven't been here in years, I think people always associate my general kind of like worldview with leniencies, and being more open-minded, etc. I'm not open-minded to leniencies. I'm open-minded to a sensible way of looking at Judaism. One that can progress a person, help a person progress spiritually. That's what I'm open-minded to. Okay, I've never been open-minded to just laxity for the sake of laxity. That's never been my idea. I've never been the thing that I'm so supportive of. The reason that I am able to be lenient is because I see the end game. The end game for me with everybody that I talk to is to try and raise their spiritual level. That's where I want to get to. I don't want to get to a situation where they're less religious as a result of meeting me than they were before. But I do think that the question is not whether they're going to be religious tomorrow. The question is whether they're going to be religious in 10 years, or in 20 years, or in 30 years, whether they're going to love Hashem and love the mitzvahs and be committed and be interested, etc. That's what we need to think. So if a person, comes to me and says to me, once again, if I go back to mental health, can I be makel, for OCD and NIDA, right? If I say no because of what she's going to do tomorrow, in 2 years she's not going to be religious. So what's the point? What do we do? And the Gemara in Yoma is very clear. Chalel alav Shabbat achat kedei sheishmor Shabbatot harbeh. The rabbi said you're mechalel one Shabbos to keep many Shabbases. That's Chazal said that. Not me. I'm liberal, right? But the rabbis they were seriously from. Yeah. So they understood. They understood what to say. They understood that there are broader considerations than what the person is going to do today, tomorrow. That's only one day. Yeah. We also need to be concerned what they're going to do today, tomorrow. We need to direct them and give them the proper direction. But at the end of the day, life doesn't end tomorrow. There's a long game to play. So we need to play the long game. We need to make sure that long game, is intact. With mental health, that's alachat kama v'kama. It's so much more so, because it's such a long journey. Anyone who's gone through mental health challenges or knows someone who's gone through mental health knows that it's a journey. It's a very long journey. And if we don't learn to play the long game with mental health, we'll lose a lot of people. And I say again, the question is not a question of leniency. It's a question of balance. The Rambam in Moreh Nevuchim knew what he was doing. The Rambam said, when a person comes to me and says, I need to be either religious and traditional or sensible and logical. So the Rambam says, I can do both. Here, I'll write a whole book and show you how to do both. That's what I'm trying to do with mental health. You can do both. You don't have to choose between being religious and caring for your mental health, which people do. That's what they do today. They either leave everything behind and they say, I need to take care of myself. So forget it. I can't do Shabbos and I can't do this and I can't do that, etc. Just forget all that stuff. So that's option one for them. And option two is I'm going to suffer for my religion. Akedat Yitzchak, right? So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a personal akedah on myself. I'm going to deteriorate from a mental health perspective until there's nothing left, and all for my shmirat hamitzvot. I had a meeting with the rabbis today in the RCV. Not everyone, some of them. I told people, I hear from people all the time how much they hate Shabbat. I know it's a blunt thing to say. I love Shabbat. I do. I really love Shabbat. I love the day. I love spending time with the family. I work on Shabbat as a community rabbi, so I don't like working. But except for the working part, yeah, Shabbat is a wonderful day. It's a day full of holiness and full of meaning and inspiration. I generally enjoy and benefit from Shabbat. People with mental health challenges hate Shabbat. That's how they say it. They dread Shabbat. Already on Thursday or Wednesday, they start dreading Shabbat. They start getting all tense and anxious. Why? Because they need their phones, because they need electronics. It helps regulate their mood, helps regulate how they function, And without that, they need to substitute for other things. And those other things are not always as potent or as useful or as helpful. And they can't always deal with that, right? So therefore, they need something to keep them grounded and to help them. Sometimes you can find other things that are not music or whatever, but it's not always helpful, and many times not helpful. So therefore, one second, and then you can ask. So therefore, people simply they talk about how they can't and when Shabbat is out, it's such a relief, such a relief. Now I don't want that to be the feeling, I want them to love Shabbat. I want to return something of Shabbat to them. Remember, they're coming to me, right? If they wanted to just do nothing, they would just do whatever they wanted to do. They're coming to me because they care. People sometimes, they feel so bad. They say, am I even religious? Am I this? Am I that? I always say, you're the biggest tzaddik of all. Look at you. You're suffering so much, and yet you've decided to ask me a shaila. Instead of just doing whatever you wanted to care for yourself, you decided not to do that. You decided to pick up the phone or write me a message and see what you can do right. The Giborei Koach Oseh Dvaro, those are people are the real tzaddikim. I can't believe I'm in awe of them. I'm inspired by people with mental health challenges because of the effort that they put in to conserve something of their religiosity. So as a result of that, right, we need to help them. We need to get them to a place of balance where they can keep Shabbat to some extent. They can conserve whatever there is of that, plus at the same time can take care of their mental health.
No, thank you. I was just going to say that I can hark back to old enough to remember an era before the smartphones and before everything else. And I can say growing up, I was surrounded by people who weren't keeping Shabbat. And I think it goes back to the question before about education. That the focus of Shabbat was, what do we know about Shabbat? There's this big list of things you can't do. Well, what is there to like about a day that's defined by, I can't do the things I'd like to do. They don't have to be anything to do with electronics. But then that becomes the mind focus. That becomes the issue. And then they can't love Shabbat. They're not capable of it because their mind, no matter what you tell them, their mindset is always harking back to, no. It's a set of do-nots.
That's part of the halacha education, so to speak, piece, 100%. But let's remember that it's not just about that, right? It's that, and it exacerbates a condition, a real condition that's actually going on, right? It's like sometimes people say to me, aren't you afraid that it's contagious? Like if we talk about, if we're raising awareness, aren't you afraid that if you raise awareness about depression, there'll be more depression? People will suddenly say, oh, I also have it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I always say, look, I don't think that it's contagious in the way that you mean. In other words, I don't think that someone who is, totally healthy hears that someone else, God forbid, tried to commit suicide, and then he also wants to commit suicide for the attention or whatever it is. Healthy people don't do those things. Obviously, if the person is unhealthy and is exposed to certain unhealthy practices, yes, I believe that could rub off, in some way. But you do need that first base, so to speak, unhealthiness in order to do that. So what you're saying is correct, but let's remember that there has to be also a real thing, right? Otherwise, people usually act in a healthy way if they are healthy, so they hopefully will not need the phone or, et cetera, et cetera. If they're generally healthy, we can talk to them about that and say, you're okay, yeah.
It's obvious that we need to be emotionally healthy in order to be spiritually healthy, right? And today we've got so many kids going off the derech, and rabbis are saying, let them do this and let them do that.
Yeah.
Do you feel maybe that I agree that we should feel responsible, but perhaps too much has been put on this generation? For instance, say a 13-year-old boy has to get up and go 3 times to shul and do all these things. And we know teenagers need extra sleep. And
Right.
how do you balance this so that they'll have that emotional wellness in order to have that spiritual wellness? It's a very hard act when they
Yes.
are being so much is being expected of them. So now we have this new emotional or mental illness of a whole lot of teenagers going off
Yeah.
the derech.
Yeah.
Literally. How do you control this?
Right. I mean, it's a bit off topic because, it's not mental illness or disorders. It's just a mental concern, right? No, I'm going to answer the question. Don't worry. I'm just saying. I wasn't trying to say that to say that your question is not in place. What I'm trying to say is that we just need to be clear where our borderlines, what I'm talking about, and et cetera. So 100%, what you're saying is definitely something to consider, for sure. I think that most of the work has to happen in the house with those things, meaning it's chinuch. Yeah, I mean we can put it on the educators in schools, but I think generally it's the parents that need to be, in a sense, responsible for that. Look, I can tell you what I mean. I'm not saying that whatever I do is great. Yeah, but I can tell you what I do with my kids. Yeah, I very clearly have always told my kids they have to come daven. Yeah, so they come to shul on Shabbos. During the week, a bit more lax. They can do whatever, not whatever they want. But I make enough sarcastic remarks to make sure that they understand where I stand. But but nevertheless, in general, on Shabbos for sure, it's non-negotiable. Everybody needs to come to shul. Everybody needs. What happens if sometimes they are a bit late or they feel unwell, et cetera, whatever it is, or they say they feel unwell and I can see that they're not really unwell. They're just saying that. Sometimes I'll let it slide. Sometimes parents feel like, I'm going to catch him on a lie. I'm going to catch him on the thing. Come on, you can really come. Sometimes I do that, and sometimes not. I try not to make it too much of a coercive sort of environment. Yeah, meaning to teach responsibility without feeling like if I don't go, Abba's going to be really angry at me, et cetera. And sometimes they say that to me. Sometimes they say to me, if I don't go, you'll be angry at me, right? I said, no, I'm not going to be angry at you. If you think you want to stay home, you can stay home. Then they come. Yeah, but the point is that, yes, sometimes we feel like, if we don't coerce, then it won't happen. And by the way, sometimes it won't happen. Sometimes they won't come. Sometimes they say, if you want to stay home, and they'll stay home. And we need to, inside us, we need to be fine with that. You know what I'm saying? We need to be like, okay, chalil alav kadesh yishmor. In other words, I'm not going to coerce every single time. I'm not going to not ever coerce. I'm going to make my opinion very clear. I'm going to set a certain standard. But if I see that they're trying to get out of it, I'm going to let them get out of it sometimes. I'm going to let them weasel out a little bit, some of the time, because it's important for the kid to feel that flexibility, to feel like they're not, like they can make their own decision, et cetera. And sometimes I even tell them that way. I said to them, you know what? If you really feel you can't come, I trust you, whatever you decide. You can stay, you can come. Okay, I'm going to stay. They stay, and then halfway through suddenly they come. Yeah? Whatever it is. I see that as a win. In other words, they decided to come. I gave them an out. I told them, be an adult, decide on your own. If you really feel you can't come, I think that that's a legitimate reason, but now you decide whether you really can come or not. All those things are meant to empower and to give the kid the feeling that tefillah is not a punishment. The tefillah is something that they can choose or not choose, because they anyway will, right? I always say, anyway they will at some point choose or not choose, whether it's a 20 or 21 or 22 or 25 or 30. Eventually, people are just going to choose. Whether I like it or not, they're going to choose. So how hard am I going to hold on? I always say, when I was raising little kids, today my kids are between 10 and 20. When I was raising kids between 0 and 10, I always thought that was hard, because I always had to tell them what to do and tell them what to do and tell them what to do. Now I realize 10 and 20, that's the hard part, where you can't tell them what to do. Yeah, it's shutting up that's harder. Yeah, speaking my mind, that's easy. Yeah. Telling them what I think they're doing wrong and everything, et cetera. But seeing them doing something wrong and shutting up about it, that's really difficult. Yeah, because I have a lot to say. So so it's just that. But we need to learn to shut up. that's the truth. We need to learn a little bit that it's not always about saying what's what. You need to trust the kid. You need to give them a direction. You need to give them an anchor. You need to give them a good basis. But you also need to let them a little bit on their own. And I think that we'll see less kids going off the derech that way. It doesn't mean to let go completely. Oh, just don't tell them what to do at all. I'm not saying that. Yeah, I think that's wrong. But I do think we need to play a little bit of a game, like back and forth with the kid, et cetera, to give them the freedom, but at the same time to keep them close, And if the cameras weren't on, maybe I'd even tell some personal stories from, family members. But I'm not going to do that. Yeah.
Can I paddle back to a comment you said earlier around there is no chazal on mental health?
Yeah.
So, and I understand your guiding principles will be, what's good for the person, and it's clear that this is a very difficult issue. So in terms of when you do make halachic statements or you posek on certain things, again, take into account the wider issue, what's your knowledge base then on which you would make these decisions?
So let me be clear, okay? Chazal, of course, spoke about mental health. Okay, I think everybody who learns a little bit of Mishnah knows Cheresh, Shoteh, V'Katan. There's a famous trio of individuals who are exempt from mitzvahs, right? The Shoteh is someone who is not mentally competent, and he features widely, in the Mishnah. So not Chazal were unaware of mental health, but the Shoteh is a very specific condition. It is someone who is exempt from mitzvahs. How many people with mental health conditions would you say are exempt, meaning to the extent that they're not mentally competent to keep mitzvahs? So you understand what I'm talking about. In other words, Shoteh is probably more akin to psychosis or mania, right? Which are extreme examples of a mental health condition. They're not neuroses.
Not depression.
Right, they're not neuroses, right? Depression can sometimes rise to a psychotic depression. But yes, that's right. Usually it's a neurosis, right? And usually we would say, oh, thank you. I think there's already, we're adding 1 cup every half an hour. So you know what I'm trying to say? So what I'm saying is like this. Chazal didn't talk about a lot of those things, but they did talk about some. So there's some basis, but beyond that, right, I did a lot of research to see what, from about 2,000 years ago throughout, what the literature had to say. And I collected a lot of excerpts from here and from there. There isn't a lot of stuff, but there is some. Enough that we can start building a foundation off of. But there's definitely sometimes there's like little jumps that we need to make. Without a doubt, I'm not denying that. There are little jumps we need to make in order to fill in those gaps. How big the jump is a function of how much research you've done and how good you are at learning. So if you do a lot of research and you're pretty good at learning, you can make those jumps smaller. But there will definitely be jumps within the halachic process we'll need to make in order to reach our current situation. Right? The DSM-5, which is like the Bible for psychiatry, has about 220-ish disorders, that are featured over there. Obviously, we don't have a halachic response directly to most of them. There's no direct references in sources, so we'd have to infer, right? But we infer from principles that we can many times trace back. That's the foundation base. And of course, while I wrote my book, Nafshi, BeShe'elati, I also went to poskim to great halachic men in order to be able to get their opinions and incorporate them in the book and all that. Yeah.
Do you have training in psychology or counseling?
Fantastic question. No, I don't. I am not a mental health professional. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a social worker. It's important for 2 reasons. Okay, 1, because it's important for me and for anyone who listens to me also to know my boundaries, to know my limits, what I'm able. I sat with Dr. Shmuel Harris, who's a Melburnian originally. I sat with Dr. Shmuel Harris for 2.5 years to learn this topic before I said a peep about it, at all, online or offline. So all the knowledge that I have is from mental health professionals. But I myself am not a mental health professional. And like I said, people sometimes do ask me, what do you think about this treatment, about that treatment? I always say, I don't know, because I am not a mental health professional. You want a mental health go ask someone, right? Even on very contentious issues, which I'm sure everyone has opinion on, like about conversion therapy for LGBTs, right? You might say, oh, you have to have an opinion on that. Why do I have to have an opinion on that? Like, I'm not a mental health professional. No, but you have to have. It's an ethical issue. Maybe, maybe not. I think there are ethical elements to it. I think there are mental health elements to it. I'd rather not give opinions on therapy. I'd rather let the mental health professionals give opinion on therapy, whatever therapy it is, and say what they think about it, rather than me start to say, because somehow all rabbis have opinions on things that they've never even experienced or read about. So I whatever I know. Whatever I don't know. Yeah. So like I said, I know everyone seems to have an opinion on conversion therapy. I'm the only one left that doesn't have. Okay. So I think that those who deal with it and talk about it, learn it, etc., should be the ones that have an opinion about it, and not people who are not learned and don't know. But the other flip side of that coin is that it's very important that I don't have a degree in those issues. And I'll explain what I mean. Because I once was thinking about getting a degree, and Dr. Harris, who I wrote the book with, told me, don't get it, don't get the degree. So I said, why don't you want me to get the degree? So he said, look, there's a lot of mental health professionals who talk about mental health. And if you get a degree, you'll be like one of them. Meaning you'll be a guy who talks about mental health because that's his degree, that's his profession, that's what he knows. So of course you talk about it. Right now, you're someone without a degree who talks about it. That's unique. What was he trying to say? He was trying to say there is something anti-stigmatic about me talking about it. People come to hear me. I mean, I don't know if I'm a good or bad speaker, but that's besides the point. Yeah? People come to hear me because I'm not a mental health professional. When you hear a psychologist or a psychiatrist talk about it, you're like, yeah, but that's his job. Where do we see all the people with mental health challenges? We see them, in the office of the therapist or behind the four walls of the psych ward. That's where we see them. They're not in the community. They're not among us necessarily. Now I'm talking about it. I'm a community rabbi. I'm in the community. Yeah, I see them all the time, right? So, yes, it's here, right? There are people in this room with mental health challenges that we don't know about. Yeah, like there's it's everywhere. We need to understand that it's among us. Yeah, and the fact that I talk about it without a degree, is significant in that sense because it's bringing it closer to home. It's saying, if I talk about it, you should talk about it. That's what it's, in a sense, that's what it's saying. Yeah, like we should all be talking about it. It's not just the mental health professionals that should be talking about it. We should all be trying to raise awareness and think about it, and what it means. So that's the significance of that. Yeah.
So considering that you're posting pretty much predominantly, it sounds, in the area of mental health, how much information about the severity of someone's disorder do you require in order to, poskin? Or do you generally just go to the side of extreme leniency just in case?
First of all, I want to be clear, I do still know other fields of halacha. Because sometimes people are like, this is the only thing you really know, right? And so one time people ask me, the fleshik fork and the milchik sing, I'm like, oh good, one of those questions. Yeah, I forgot that we have those, but yes, it's good to get one of those normal, regular questions I can answer like that. But yes, look, when someone comes to me with a question, by now I'm a little bit more experienced, right? So I know which questions to ask. I know how to get the information that I need. It's still going to be, a lot of times if I don't know the person at all, still many times could be like a 15, 20-minute conversation at least, because you need to know a little bit the history and what's going on, the symptoms and, etc. But yeah, I can get what I need, from that person. I can't usually just like paskin like that. And like I said, to be just lenient for the person is also unhelpful a lot of times. It may be wrong even medically for the person that I be lenient, but it's certainly wrong spiritually to just say lenient. So what you really need to do is you need to adjust the halacha to the situation and think about a horizon for that person, meaning where are we going with this, etc. What's going to be in 2 months or in 3 months or in 5 or 6 or 7 months, etc. You have to think through the different issues that the person is going through. By now, it's a little bit automatic for me, but not in all cases, right? Some cases still blow me away, and I'm like, I don't know what to do with this. I need to think about it. I need to talk to your therapist. I need to talk to this. I need to talk to that, etc. Sometimes it's like that, but it depends if the case is a little bit unusual or it's something more. But look, you always need, at the beginning when I first was writing the book, and I would ask stupid questions. Like I would go to a therapist and I would say, what do you think about if a person says to me they need to listen to music on Shabbat because of the depression? What should I say to that? And the therapist would say, that's a dumb question. I don't even know how to answer that question. I say, why not? He says, what's depression? Depression. That's like a word. Doesn't mean anything. Yeah. You have to tell me like what kind of depression, how long, what are the symptoms? There's suicidal ideation. There's anhedonia. There's this. There's that. Etc. Like give me a little bit more. Kol mikre legufo. Each case is different. So at the beginning, I would say, like, I shouldn't write a book, like I just write a pamphlet. Each case is different. I'm like, send to everybody, yeah? Because apparently I can't write a book about a general case, because there is no such thing as a general case. Every case is different. So I learned how to write the book, yeah? Rabbis like to define. I had to give that up for the book. Instead of defining, I described. Yeah, I described cases rather than defined by like a buzzword, yeah? The words don't mean anything. They give a direction, right? If I say the person's suffering from OCD, what do we do? What do you mean? Explain the OCD, yeah? It's just a word. It doesn't mean anything without the explanation of what actually is going on. So at the end of the day, I do need information, but like I said, I can many times understand what kind of information it is, very, very quickly, just because I'm more expert, in that area. Yeah.
So do you start off each time someone asks you for Halacha by saying, well, why do you actually want to know? Is that like the approach?
When someone asks me a shaila,
Yeah.
they usually explain why they want to know, but not always. Yeah, usually they'll say, I need this or I need that or this is what's going on with me, because they already know, they've heard that I understand this issue. They don't fear judgment. They don't fear that I will misunderstand or misinterpret. They're very open with me, in terms of those things. Although sometimes it's true that I do get questions sometimes that I don't know what they are. In other words, people will ask a question, they'll write this whole Megillah, and at the end of it, I'll be like, I still don't know what you want. Sometimes it's like that. And they don't even know. A lot of times because they don't know.
I was thinking, as a retired lawyer, when people ask what is the law on X, sounds like a simple question, but if they're actually wanting advice for themselves, the advice might ultimately mean don't rely on the law, use psychology, or it can be you could give 10 different people the same answer the same question. Like say 10 different women who suffered domestic violence came to see me.
Right.
And I could tell each of them
Something different.
For sure. Because that's what's going to work best in their situation.
It's the same here.
And the straight up law isn't always very useful. So I assume that's kind of where you're coming from too.
Absolutely. It's the same here, without a doubt. Yeah.
In the 3 years that you've been public with your work, have you seen a change in the halakhic landscape? And if you haven't, what else are you hoping to see in the next few years?
I've seen a little bit of a change. I think more people are writing about it. I don't want to take credit for everything, yeah, but I've seen some people, more people write about mental health and halacha questions, raise things, some of I've still seen psakim that are inappropriate, and are not at all relevant to the situation. But I think that, now that my book is out, it'll help also things in terms of that. Meaning, look, it doesn't matter if people accept my book or critique my book. It'll be a jump starter for conversation. Yeah? I have no problem with people upending the entire thing and saying, I'm totally wrong about everything, which I'm not. But if they did say that, yeah, it would be all right because they would at least they would be having the conversation. They would say why I'm wrong. So good. So tell me why I'm wrong. Yeah, good. So let's talk. Look, it's the first book of its kind. Any first book of its kind has got to be wrong with something, right? There's got to be some mistakes in there, right? Because it's the first one. So okay. So I'm pretty sure that there are mistakes in there. I just don't know exactly what they are. Some people have shown me a few things. I'm willing to fix those things. But my point is, it jumpstarts the conversation. That's the most important thing. So I don't think I can say that we've already seen, the differences, even though I've been outspoken about it for 3 years. So I've seen a little bit of difference, not a lot. I think the book is gonna move that along. I think the nonprofit that I created is gonna move that along. But we'll see. And I think it's been afsheinu. It's very important that the conversation does change because we can literally save lives a lot of times with this, and really help people, in a significant way. Yeah.
Can you share any examples, or are there any examples, where you think halacha or Judaism demands that people do things that are counterproductive for their mental health?
The entire idea is that the answer is no, right? The entire idea of what I do is that the answer is no. I think that that the base assumption should be that that's not true. That we have to find a way. Okay? I'll give an example, okay, that I gave also to the rabbis that I was sitting with today. So people sometimes ask me, have you ever said no to anybody? So I always say, yes, I have said no to people. Okay? So for example, there was a young woman with trichotillomania, which is hair pulling disorder. May not sound as bad as the other ones, but it's pretty bad. Yeah? Hair pulling disorder is like an obsessive disorder where you pull hair and you can't stop. So a woman sent me an email, right? And she had like bald spots all over her head. Yeah? And because of the hair pulling. And it ruined her life. Like she couldn't go out, the house. She couldn't go to work. She couldn't go anywhere. It completely shut the door, on her ability to function outside the house, basically. What was the question? The question was that she wanted to do needlework on Shabbat. She found her coping mechanism was that if she did needlework of some sort, that it allowed her to stop the hair pulling. Now, halachically, the definition of this individual would be a choleh she'en bo sakana, someone who is sick but not dangerously sick, not suicidal or going to hurt themselves or other people or anything along those lines. From a halachic perspective, what she wanted to do was a deoraita, was a Torah prohibition. We don't allow Torah prohibitions for people who are choleh she'en bo sakana. So the answer to that, the straight answer is no. But that's not the answer to the question. In other words, the answer is not, no, you can't do it. Good luck. Yeah? The answer has to be, no, you can't do it. Let's work on a solution. Let's see what we can do. Let's see how we can find She said that was the only thing. I said, well, we got to work together with your therapist or whatever it is, try and work out a solution that, I'm here for you and, let's see what we can do. Let's see how we work with this. By the way, the same solution that I tell people who are gay. Same idea. Yeah, someone says, I'm a gay, Orthodox person. What do I do? So I tell the person, look, we're not going to solve what do I do today, but I'm with you for the long haul. Let's take it day by day. Let's work it out. Let's see what you need. Let's see what comes up, et cetera, et cetera. I believe we can find a place for you within Orthodoxy. It's going to be a tough road. It's not going to be simple, but let's work together and see what we can do. Right? I don't have all the answers, milakatchila. I don't know how it's going to be. I just know that we can look to the future and aim. It's the same thing with that individual. So, and to answer your question, I firmly believe that Judaism needs to be in consonance with one's mental health. I firmly believe that we can reach that goal, but we need to work hard to reach that goal. I don't think we need to bend the rules too much in order to get there. I don't think we need to start doing things that are not halachically appropriate. I'm not saying any of those things. I think we can keep within the boundaries of halacha and still tend to people's mental health. We just need to work hard, on doing it. It's going to take time, to get to a solution that is required. You see what I'm saying?
On the description of your talk for tonight, you mentioned social media.
Yeah.
What can you say about social media?
Social media is definitely something that it's very interesting. I think that people always say, right, that COVID was bad for mental health, right? You always say, oh, like whenever we're talking about mental health, people are like, oh, especially after COVID, which I'm not denying. I agree. Okay, if I'm not saying that Corona wasn't bad for mental health, but interestingly, I have had some comments of people who said, oh, thank God for COVID. Why thank God for COVID? Because people, let's say, who, in a sense, disappear from the community because of their mental health conditions, didn't have to explain why they were disappearing, right? If they were institutionalized, right, in the psych ward for X amount of months and no one saw them, they didn't have to explain themselves, like why they were gone. Yeah? Oh, because of COVID, of course. So, what do you mean? Why didn't you see me? Yeah? It wasn't because I had a suicidal attempt and I was, I was now in the hospital, for X amount of time. Just COVID. Why don't you come to shul anymore? COVID. What's there to explain? So it's all about COVID. Yeah. So it's sorry. Yeah. It would give people an out. On some level. Social media. I know people blame social media for a lot of the ills of society. Yeah. As someone who is on social media, I can say you got a point. Yeah. There's definitely some negative things about social media. that we can talk about. It's hard for me to speak to specific research about whether this causes that or that causes this, et cetera, et cetera. I'll let people who do that kind of research do it. There's always going to be more research done after that proves the opposite and this and that, but I'm not going to go into that. I can say that I think that the anonymity that social media affords individuals can sometimes be a help to those who want to reach out, and don't want too much of exposure. Yeah. So a lot of times it's very hard, for people to expose their mental health challenges and conditions. I think that social media has, in a sense, streamlined some of that process and helped people. It's also helped people get support, meaning they can just post something, and people will like the post and this and that, et cetera, et cetera. So there's positives and negatives, of course, to everything. On the other hand, as we heard before, people also become dependent on it, on social media and other electronic sort of things, et cetera. Fine. I think that it allows people to find a community, right? On social media, you can always find also a community. If you want, I don't know, people who think the number 6 is offensive, I'm guessing you can probably create a Facebook group, and you'll have some. Right? But people who sign up. But there's always, a few people for every cause. But, fine. But I think people also really get support, from a lot of like-minded individuals who they didn't even know or they would never have access to, through social media. So I think, as always with everything, it's a mixed bag. Some of it's good, some of it's bad. But I think that it also, besides the obvious negatives that people always highlight, I think it also brought some positives, without a doubt. Without a doubt. Yeah.
Can you talk about your nonprofit that you just mentioned?
Yes. Look, I'm not like a big fundraiser, but I need to fundraise. Yeah. So I appreciate you bringing it up. It is important. Look, I was going to bring flyers, but I forgot. So as you can see, I'm not really good at this. Nevertheless, we created a nonprofit called Maglei Nefesh. Maglei Nefesh basically has already trained 3 cohorts of rabbis and rabbaniyot, women as well. We've started a hotline. I go around the world raising awareness. Every week, I'm not somewhere else in the world, but I'm somewhere else. A lot of times in Israel, but I'm always giving either 2 or 3 lectures. Usually, a lot of people are interested in the topic. They want to hear about it, etc. And we have a lot of plans. Okay, I'll just give you some of the ideas of some of the plans. First, the shidduch world, okay, desperately needs this as well. There was a young woman who contacted me. I posted this on Facebook. Whoever follows me knows. But about 3 months ago, I get a call from a girl. She says to me she has an eating disorder in her past. She's a Haredi girl from Beitar Elite. And she's going out with someone. They're going to go on their 3rd date. She wants to tell him. She doesn't want him to run away. She's afraid it'll scare him away when he hears about eating disorder. She's a Haredi girl. He's a Haredi boy. Yeah, she's afraid. What to do? So I said to her, we spoke for half an hour. I gave her directions. I told her what to say, how to say it, et cetera, et cetera. The next evening, he calls me. She gave him my number. Yeah. So he went, I heard you understanding this. I want to understand what you said. So we had to talk for half an hour. Then the next day, she said, we're going on to the 4th date. Now I want to know what else to say. So we had a conversation before that date. Yeah? Guess who called me the next evening? Yeah? So the point is that... I don't think they're families necessarily. I mean, she told me that her mother was like blessing my name. But I'm not sure that I'm the right person for that specific couple. Probably I'd stick out in their wedding. But nevertheless, I was invited to the 4th, but I couldn't make it. But she said she'll invite me to the wedding. It's an Elul or something. They're getting married. It worked out. But every time before each date, she would call me, then he would call me. She would call me before the date, he would call me after the date. Yeah, she would tell him what medication she was on. He would call me to figure out whether the medication was severe or not severe, and what it means, et cetera, et cetera. V'chulei v'chulei. And I basically walked them through their dates until that, and he would also go back to his Rav. And he would call me, get my information, go to his Rav, give the information. The Rav would say, that's fine. He would come back to me and say, my Rav says it's fine. Yeah, v'chulei v'chulei. So that took me hours and hours of my time to do. And then she told one of her friends about this, and she called me also. Now I'm with her. Yeah, so that we only had one conversation, but she, so now this is needed. In other words, people, it's not about being mishadach people. It's about people understanding mental health properly. Yeah, if you say eating disorder, it sounds scary. So you have to say it in a certain way, to explain what it is in a certain way. You have to, not to lie. I always say we don't lie. You can't hide it. You can't lie about it. You need to be honest with the person. But of course, we need to tell people in a certain way. So that's another thing that I want to do as part of Magna Nefesh, is to create a service that people can use when they're going out on shidduchim, etc., so that they can give the right information, the proper information. People can get accurate information about these things, not be scared off by it, but of course to know what it is before you go into it. All these things I think are very, very necessary. There are people who call me about, they're estranged from their families, many times borderline personality disorder. They're not connected with their families. They need places to be for Shabbos. There was a girl right before Pesach wanted a place for Leila Seder. So I told her, no problem, I'll organize a place for you. I figured I would post on Facebook, that someone's looking, and I would get, a bunch of offers, and I would do it, no problem. I did get a bunch of offers, but it was a big problem, because every offer that I gave her, she said, no, that's too far, there I don't want to be, I had a traumatic event next to that place, et cetera, et cetera. It went on and on and on. Yeah, I had to work through 10, 12 families before I found the right one that she was willing to go to. Yeah, and then finally I found the right one, and then she tells me, I want to say a Dvar Torah at the table, but I'm not sure what to say. I said, you can look up. No, you tell me what Dvar Torah to say. So then I sent her 7 Divrei Torah. She said, no, not those. Yeah, give me a different one. Yeah, I want the one that Rav Kook. I said, I don't even know Rav Kook. Anyway, so I had to call someone who knows Rav Kook well. He gave the source, and then she was like, it's not that one either. Yeah, so okay, fine. So I told her, look, I've given you 8 Divrei Torah. You can figure it out. Yeah, but the point is, all that was to say, right? That's another thing that I think we can do is placement, to help people find places for Leila Seder, find places for Shabbos, find places to be, with people, etc. Within the Orthodox community, we have a very strong communal structure within Orthodoxy. The Orthodox community is a strong community. We do a lot of chesed. You know that we do a lot of chesed, right? When a woman gives birth, wow, meals, up the wazoo, Baruch Hashem, they take the kids to school and this and that, etc. When we know and when we want to and we're able to, we do a lot of chesed. We are a good community. We're good people. But we don't know how to do chesed with people with mental health challenges. We just don't know how. We don't know where to find them. We don't know what to say to them. And we don't know what to do with them. So therefore, we don't almost do anything a lot of times. We try.
We've tried to create a support group here in Melbourne.
Yeah.
But it's very hard because people don't want to be
come forward. I know the problems. And some other time we can talk about the problems. But because there's a lot to say on that too. I'm not criticizing the community.
No, but it's very hard.
I have some ideas about that. But right now, I'll just say that I think that every community, can find ways to encourage it. We can't promise anything. We can definitely find ways to encourage more sharing, more. But you're right, it's hard. I'm not taking away from the fact that it's difficult.
More rabbis on board. And
right.
The rabbis are a bit fearful because they don't have the knowledge behind and the mental.
Fair enough.
And that can be a problem.
I agree with everything you just said. But the point is that no one's waiting for us to do it. We need to help people. People need the help. So there's a lot to do. So the point is, all that was to say, that you should give lots of money to Magna Nefesh. If you want to see any or all of these programs happen, then the nonprofit that I've created, together with another Melbourne boy, Nadav Ellenson, is doing this work. We're the only ones doing the work. There aren't other organizations, and we're doing something quite unique and I think important really for the entire Orthodox community, and I really want to see it succeed. So Rav Marcus has, what do you have? You have a link, right, to our website. It's Magna Nefesh. It's mnefesh.org/donate. If you're able to support us on a monthly basis, wonderful. You're able to support us just as a once-off, it's wonderful as well. Whatever you can give in order to continue, I think once again is like monumentally important work. We would really, really appreciate it. And we're already at 1:45, so maybe I should finish. Probably, right? Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you so much, Rav Yoni. I know I learned a tremendous amount, not only about the details and information about mental health, but also about the importance and the need to get more involved. So thank you so much. You've really enlightened us.